Good morning. I'm Jeff Dubeck, Daytimer spokesperson, and welcome to today's webinar. We're proud to have Laura Stack, the Productivity Pro, with us to present her webinar, What to Do When There's Too Much to Do. Laura is President and CEO of the Productivity Pro Incorporated, a training firm specializing in improving productivity in high-stress industries. Laura Stack has presented keynotes and seminars on improving output, lowering stress, and saving time in the workplace. She's implemented productivity improvement programs at companies such as Walmart, Cisco Systems, UBS, Aramark, and Bank of America. A best-selling author, widely regarded as one of the leading experts in the field of employee productivity, Laura has been featured on the CBS Early Show, CNN, USA Today, and the New York Times. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce Laura Stack, the Productivity Pro.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I appreciate that very kind introduction, and as always, appreciate Daytimer's kind sponsorship and continued supporter of my work, as I am of theirs and have always been a big fan, and delighted to welcome all of you. Thank you so much for showing up today for this special preview of my newest book that is due next week in bookstores, What to Do When There's Too Much to Do. And we are so excited that you've taken some time with me here today to take a look at this new book and this new process that I'd like to show you. This is my 5th book in a series of productivity manuals, and this one, I believe, is really kind of going against the grain of most time management books. As you see, the subtitle is Reduce Tasks, Increase Results, and Save 90 Minutes a Day. So let me kind of give you the background on this concept of reducing tasks. I did a seminar, oh gosh, it's been about a year ago now, for Verizon. I walked into the ballroom to do the preparation and check the microphone, and there was an attendee who was early, who was sitting there waiting for me, and she approached me and shook my hand and said, "I'm not very excited that you're here." And I was a little taken aback by that because I hadn't even started talking yet and didn't even meet her, so I asked her, "Okay, could you tell me why?" She said, "Absolutely. We are already working as long and as hard as we possibly can here. I'm already working 70 or 80 hours a week, and I don't need some time management consultant coming in and telling me how to do more with less." She said, "I actually want to do less and achieve more." And the light bulb kind of went on for me, and I told her, you know what? That's actually what we are doing. That has been my focus and my mission for the 20 years now that the Productivity Pro has been in business. How do we actually use productivity tips, tricks, techniques to actually improve efficiency so that we can do less but actually get better results? What we want to do is get down to a normal workload, what would be comfortable for us, but you can't tell your manager, "Oh, you know, I'm just going to work less." You actually have to produce great results as part of that. So in looking at overwork and this whole topic of people saying, "I don't want to do more with less," this is the first ever Work Less, More Success guide to time management. So doing less to achieving more means that it's better to do less, not more, because we want to do better, more focused work. So in this book, I'm introducing a productivity workflow formula, what I call the PWF. And the core message is simple: reduce, reduce, reduce. I know that your to-do list is already packed to capacity. So what I'm doing here is laying out a system that is going to help you work less and achieve more. So we're going to organize our lives around the tasks that really matter, and this is crucial, figure out the ones that don't. So in the book, there are many practical strategies that are going to help you reduce your commitments, your distractions, your interruptions, your inefficiencies. We really want to shrink the to-do list, the goal being to save time around 90 minutes a day while skyrocketing your results and maintaining your sanity. So how can you get a life outside of work and be a hero at work? This is a new approach to workflow. And we're going to cover these 6 steps in the course of our webinar today. So the first thing you're going to do, as you see here in the productivity workflow formula, is you're going to determine what to do. Here, we'll talk about studying work requirements closely and triaging your to-do list and figuring out what really matters. So the reduction goal here is to reduce our to-do list. Next, step 2, we need to schedule time to do it. So the next piece of the PWF has to do with assigning time slots, durations, when do we work on certain things, how do we refuse requests graciously, how do we control meetings, and obviously there's a lot of topics that are covered in the hard copy book that we won't be able to cover in this short 1 hour today, but the goal here in step 2 is to reduce your obligations. Then we'll go to step 3, focus your attention. Here we'll look at honing your concentration to razor sharpness. How do you shut out distractions and avoid multitasking? So here we're really going to reduce the things that are keeping our attention away from the task at hand. Step 4 then in the PWF, we'll look at processing new information. How do you research effectively? How do you handle incoming information? How do you deal with email in your inbox? So the goal here is to reduce handling time, reduce processing time, reduce volume of information in our inboxes. Then step 5, we're going to close the loop. Here's where we really figure out what does and doesn't work. We look at people problems, we look at miscommunication, bottlenecks, what's keeping us from doing what we know we should be doing. How do we tighten up our system? So here we'll look at reducing inefficiencies in this entire process. And then the last step you'll notice is actually in the center of our productivity workflow formula because it's the foundation upon which your productivity sits. Manage your capacity. So here, if you don't have the energy to work, it's going to be very difficult to be productive. So here we'll look at the physical factors that affect your energy. The book discusses things such as the critical nature of sleep, diet, and exercise in ways you have not understood it before as it impacts your ability to perform during the day. So here, we're going to reduce energy expenditures so that we ensure that we have enough energy to do the things that truly matter. So there you have it. These are the 6 steps in the new productivity workflow formula. And I'm going to start off just in order, going with step 1, determining what to do. Now, there is a recording of this. You will all receive a link at the end of this webinar so that if you want to go back and review some of these concepts, you will certainly be able to do that. So step 1 in determining what to do. What I thought I would share with you in this module, given our limited time, is a new concept that I've come up with as a result of my background, my upbringing. My father is a retired colonel in the United States Air Force, and I grew up in the military, and there's definitely a culture that goes along with that. And there's a lot more talk than would be common in most households, of course, about war and strategy. And I grew up in Colorado Springs, so NORAD was there, Cheyenne Mountain Academy, a lot of military environments have what is known as triage. In NATO, for example, or in any war, the casualties, the people who come in off of the battlefield or into any emergency room, we can use just a hospital as a way that many of you can relate to this. There is a standard triage that occurs for patients. If you walk into the door and you think it's your, quote, turn to be treated, but then someone else walks in the door after you and they have a more urgent injury, the armies, the hospitals, the battlefields don't take care of patients in the order in which they appear or which they arrive. They treat them in order of severity. So if you look at an emergency room, and this is very common, they are given a label. A P1 in triage is a patient who presents not breathing. Okay? This is life or death. Now, don't get too hung up on the labels, because maybe it's life or death for another reason, but it's just called a P1, meaning there's something so critically wrong with this person that they are soon going to die from their injuries very quickly. A P2 then is called bleeding. Now this, you could be bleeding so severely that you could be dying from it, true. So bleeding could actually be a P1, but this is known as something that will become a crisis as time passes, a P2. P3 then are called broken bones. So if it's left untreated for long enough, it will become a problem. Let's say that I break my arm and I don't have that set, let's say for a month. I'm going to have some fairly long-term problems as a result of that. Is it going to kill me? No. Is it going to become a crisis? No. But it's going to create problems if I simply do nothing about it. And the last one, P4s in an emergency room, are what are considered burns, meaning, it hurts. It might require maybe down the road, we might do some plastic surgery or something to fix it, but it's just painful. But it's not something that's going to create problems or kill you. So if you come in with a headache, you come in with a paper cut, obviously, these are things that they would just point over to a corner and say, yeah, go ahead and take a seat over there for hours. And so when things happen to us in our workforces and in our lives, people do not tend to triage them. In my experience, most people handle their work in the order in which it appears. So, they get to work, someone walks in their office, they handle that, they get an email, they handle that, they get a phone call, they handle that, they get an IM, they handle that, and at the end of the day, many people get this weird sensation where they go, I didn't get anything done. In other words, email doesn't enter your life in priority order, does it? It's not like if you have 10 emails, they are important, starting with number 1 and ending with number 10. So similarly, we have to triage the things that happen to us in the workplace and make constant, conscious choices to handle them, not in the order by which they appear, but in the order of importance. Again, realizing that our to-do lists are packed. If we have 117 things to do, something's going to go. How do we make sure that we do the 10 that are critically important and not the 25 that were trivial and make absolutely no impact? So a P1 then, I call this, you will get fired if this isn't done today. Okay, maybe not really fired, but that's the kind of urgency that I want people to think of when they think of a P1. And of course, when would we do these? First. Many people, however, have a tendency to go, oh my gosh, I just really don't want to start on that right now. I'll get to that this afternoon, at which time, of course, there's some kind of crisis or they don't have the energy to do it. And some of these things end up getting pushed off. Have you ever had to stay late because you didn't do something that needed to get done, or thought, gosh, I wish I could just do this day over. I would make different choices about what I did. P2s then become valuable long-term activities that should be done soon. Okay, this is kind of like when we were in school and the professor gave us a term paper to do. And it's September now, say at the start of the fall semester, and the term paper is due in November. So when did you do the paper? Many people did it in November. Well, in November, that actually has become a P1. In other words, many crises don't appear on our plates until we leave them long enough while they are P2s. Any P2 that is left undone long enough, what happens to it? It becomes a P1. So some people have crises that are of their own making. Yes, we do have legitimate emergencies and things that come up that we could not have anticipated, but we also have a lot of things that otherwise would not have created problems until we put them off. So in essence, they're self-sabotage. P3 then is someone will be unhappy if you don't do this eventually. All right, so let's say out of every 10 emails you get, how many are really important out of every 10? Most people tell me 1 or 2, are really important, the rest are not. So, for example, it is a fair statement in most people's environments to say that the majority of incoming email is not important. So when we handle things that other people are asking for that are not more important than the P1s and P2s, then we're putting all those other needs over more critical issues. And this is sometimes how you feel like you can just literally sit all day in your inbox responding to them as they come in. So when someone says, hey, would you look at this for me, or something like that, well, yes, but is that something that you need to drop right now and do, or do you need to give them a reasonable due date? Saying, I'd be happy to take a look at that, I have my back up against this project, or I'm working on X, Y, and Z, or I'm prepping for this meeting, I'll get this back to you tomorrow by 2 o'clock, or some sort of reasonable deadline without reacting to it right then to the detriment of your other more critical priorities. And then the last piece of triage, the P4, would equate in the workplace to human pain management activities. These are things that we do to waste time when really we're procrastinating on not doing something that's a P1 or a P2. I know people who admit they spend countless hours on the internet or Facebook or checking their account balances at the bank or booking their next vacation, all sorts of things that we do. And the funny thing about P4 activities is that most of us know when we're doing them. We say to ourselves, I really shouldn't be doing this right now. And if you take a look at things that enter your life and have this P1 through P4 triage firmly in your mind, in fact, you can write this on a note card and pin it to your wall so that you don't do things in order that they show up, but you triage them and attack them in order. This is going to significantly help you reduce your to-do list. And the funny thing is, when you work on things that are critical, you get fewer crises, miscommunications, mistakes, rush jobs. Productivity in its true essence is not about the number of things you checked off your list. If you think about one of your coworkers, do you know anyone in your office who always looks incredibly busy? And you wonder, what the heck do? They don't actually produce any results. Or do you know anyone who works a 12-hour day and maybe you only work 8? Well, can an 8-hour-a-day person be more productive than a 12-hour-a-day person? Of course. All right, so it's not the number of things you checked off your list. It's not the number of hours you sat there. Nobody cares how many things you got checked off your list. What is the only thing that your leadership cares about? It's the value that you produce. It's your results. It's what you were actually able to generate in the time that you were there. So after step 2, you've determined by this triage process what it is that you need to do. And, this is something that you have to look at every day. I talk in the book about a hit list, high-impact tasks, so that when you have a moment of time and you're saying, what do I do next, you know exactly what that next piece is. So once you know what it is that you're supposed to be doing, then the next step is, when should I do that particular task that I've identified? Now, interestingly enough, there are good times and bad times to work on certain types of activity. And everyone has their own unique rhythm. I think there is a rhythm to work. There's an ebb, there's a flow, there's a time that we're up and a time that we're down. And if you think about your typical work day, all right, let's say you work 8 to 5, and if you were to actually chart your energy and when are you really high energy, what I call prime time, if you gave yourself an analysis on a scale of 0 to 100%, 0 meaning no energy, completely brain dead, and 100% meaning as high energy as you possibly could have. All right, my energy chart would look something like this. Now, I am not a huge morning person. I kind of need a cup of coffee and need to kind of get going again. Other people are big morning people. Maybe they start off really high. Maybe they start off up here and go on a slow, steady decline throughout the day. There's a lot of different energy periods, but when you reach the top of your energy chart, basically about the 75% mark or higher, when you're up in the top level of your energy, your brain is literally capable of doing different work, what is often called high order. What are high order activities? So in my example, I hit that 75% mark right around 10:30, 11 o'clock to 12:30. So I have a 2-hour window in my workday that I really need to take advantage of. So what kind of things should I be working on during that time? Well, typically, in that time, your brain is capable of doing things that require high focus and concentration, anything that is difficult and is going to take some time to think through. So you have to really take a look at, what am I working on during what times? If you're working on things like number crunching, problem solving, brainstorming, goal setting, working on proposals, financial information, all of those things are excellent activities to do during your prime time because they require very intense focus and concentration. So here's the problem. How do most people feel when they're really energetic? When they're in their prime time and they're up, they feel great. They're in a great mood. They're having a great time at work. What do they feel like working on? None of these things. So I watch people as they work sometimes and observe their energy levels coming down, and then they think, I guess I better get to work on that now. So something that might have taken you, let's say 30 minutes when you're in your prime time, could take you twice that long, or sometimes we just don't even attempt it. We just go, oh, I'm brain dead, I just can't even think of that, and we don't do it. So what are the things that you simply cannot do when you're brain dead? I would highly recommend that you block out of your calendar, you literally on your Outlook or Gmail, whatever it is you're using at work, Lotus, put a block as busy, People don't need to know that it's an appointment with yourself, that it's a meeting for yourself to work. And I know some people do tell me now that they do actually block out time on their calendars to work. And this is a critical time to not be in your email, to not be surfing the web, to not be doing all of those other types of activities, but to be able to focus. So once you know exactly what you should be doing and you know when the best time is for you to be doing those types of tasks, the next thing then is that we have to focus on doing them, meaning we need to actually sit down and knock them out. Here is where many people get in trouble because they know what to do. They have a block of time that they have protected. All right, they're in really high energy. They are ready to work. They sit down, and all the distractions hit. So we've got to make sure that we protect ourselves, put ourselves in kind of a cone of silence, as Max from Get Smart fame would tell us. I love this cartoon. I got permission from Pearls Before Swine to show it to you. So Mousy says, I'm here to work on my resume. I will finish my resume. Ping. Ooh, an email. Could be important. Hey, it's got a YouTube link. Got to watch it. Haha, that's great. Hey, they've got more like that. I've never even heard of the show. I'll Wikipedia it. Wait, that's not the right show, but who's that girl? She's hot. I'll Google image her. Ooh, look at these photos. I'll post them on Facebook. Hey, I got a friend request. Wait, I don't even know this guy. I should Google him. Wow, he's a freak. I'll write about him on my blog. I wonder who's talking about my blog. I should Google myself. No, it's resume time. Do the resume. Ping. Ooh, an email. So I thought, oh my gosh, this reminds me so much of what people complain about at work, that there are so many distractions that they feel like literally sometimes that they have OCD, what I call technology OCD. So shutting down that email if you absolutely cannot resist looking. Also going in and permanently turning off those global alerts. Usually when we get an alert, it changes the mouse cursor, it plays a sound, it puts an envelope in the system tray, it puts up a desktop alert. We get 4 alerts typically for one email. So if you turn off those email alerts, and maybe you could turn on a rule that says, hey, if my manager emails me, play a sound. That would increase the odds that that email could be a P1, for example. So when we close off the technology, shut down our phones, I don't even mean put it on vibrate. I mean turn it off, because many people, when the iPhone's sitting on the desk and they get a text and it vibrates, they just can't help it. They look at it. So many times this addiction to technology prevents us from really being able to be focused and head down. But the next thing that really prevents us is our own brains. Our own brains prevent us from being able to focus. We talk to ourselves. We sit down to do something, and all of a sudden we think, ooh, did I remember to call Ken about that meeting next week? And not wanting to forget to call Ken, we just reach over, pick up the phone, and call him right then. Then when we try to go back to what we're doing, we have to say, okay, where was I? So instead, I want to teach you a method for concentrating on your work. It's a 4-step process that will hopefully help you to eliminate what everyone is fondly calling multitasking, meaning it's code for not getting any one thing done. How do you concentrate on your work and not forget all of the things that you are thinking about doing as you try to work? So the first thing that you want to do is to have a capture place. This is a critical step, and many people don't have a reliable capture place. Let's say that you go to a restaurant and you're going to have lunch with a friend, and you need something to write on, and you don't have anything to write on. So what are you going to grab? Have you ever written on a napkin or a scrap piece of paper, an old grocery list, a dry cleaning ticket? Have you written on your hand? So these types of people I call scrappers. They just have little scraps of paper everywhere. Every time they think of something, they just grab a little scrap. And it's a sign of not having a predictable capture place. Now, some people have iPads and phones and their smartphones and all, and I do too. However, when I think of something to do, my first reaction is not to get out my phone and start tapping away. Electronic devices, in many instances, are not actually good capture tools, which is why I have my day timer always available, always with me everywhere I go. Because when I think of something to do, my first instinct is to get a piece of paper and a pencil and write. So having it in the day timer all in one place consolidates information and makes sure that my brain trusts exactly where I put things. So that's step one. The next step is once you think of something to do, all right, you've got your high impact task, it's a P1, you're in your prime time, you have protected your time, you've blocked out all the distractions, you're trying to focus, and all of a sudden your brain says, hey, did you remember to fax back that, signed contract for client ABC? Don't do it. Don't actually do what you think of when you're trying to focus. What are you going to do instead? You're going to record that thought in your capture place, whatever that is going to be for you, paper, electronic, etc. And then you're going to go right back to that task. So you're working on something, get a thought, don't do it, record it in your day timer, go right back to what you were working on. This four-step process will ensure that not only you're able to get through the important task that you were working on, but you also will not forget all those little things your brain reminds you about while you're trying to concentrate. And when you're done that task, there will be a list of the things that you thought of, which you do what with? Triage, of course, to make sure that you're making purposeful, conscious choices, not just reacting to whatever your brain thinks of or whatever shows up, because they never do show up in priority order. Now, when you're sitting down to work and you're actually, kind of head down on this task, the next thing that sometimes happens to people is that they can't find what they want when they want it. Now, I've had many people actually tell me that they waste 20, 30, 40, 60 minutes a day just looking for things. So if your email inbox, for example, has 2,000 messages in them as you're working, sometimes you may need to reference something. Well, then, you start fiddling around looking for something, and a half hour can go by, or sometimes we get completely off course and distracted, or maybe you need to put your hands on a file or some project information, but your desk is just hopelessly covered by piles of paper. So in this next step, then, it really becomes critical to have a system and have a place for everything and be able to process this new information as it comes in quickly and efficiently, whether it's paper, email, voicemail, verbal requests, meeting notes, internet data, research, all of the things that we get in reading material. How are you going to have a trusted system so that you can find what you want when you want it, hopefully in about 30 seconds or less? So I want to show you, and if you have been in any of my seminars before, you may have heard of my well-known 6D system. This is going to help you reduce the amount of information in your inboxes, what I call the 6 Ds of information management. And there have been many takeoffs of this system since I first created this. A lot of people try to, change it, but I really would love for you to learn it in this order because it will help you go through a logical thought process as you're processing your different inboxes. And the D stands for decisions. There are 6 different things that you can do with information in general as it enters your life. So the first thing that you can do is discard it. You can just get rid of it. Now, this step is first, always, because whatever you don't toss, now what? Now you're going to have to do something with this information and process it through your system. So it will benefit you to get rid of as much as possible. For example, if you look at a typical filing cabinet, what percentage of information that people keep do you think they ever look for again? What about a typical folder on a computer file? Most information that we keep, we don't need. And so making this first pass is going to save time in the end. Now, whatever you can't discard, or some people use ditch or destroy or dump, those are all good. Next, step 2, delegate. Now, this does not mean necessarily formally, as in the person works for you, but it's getting information from you to someone else. You could even use discuss or distribute as a replacement for this one. So you're going to get information to someone else. So far, you're either going to throw it away or give it away. If you can't do either one of those, step 3 is D for do. You need to actually do something with this information. There is action involved. Deal with it is another good D for this step. So there's something that you need to complete with the particular information that you're holding. And step 4 is, well, yeah, I need to complete it, but I can't do it right now. I need to do it at a later date. So dating the information means asking yourself specifically, when do I need to see this again? And having a system in place whereby it automatically comes back up again on the day that you need to see it, regardless of the medium of the information. So if you send someone an email and you say to yourself, okay, if I haven't heard back from this person in 3 days, I need to remember to follow up with that person again. What do you do right then to activate your system? And many people are missing this step of the process. The 5th one then is put it in a drawer. So if you can't toss it or give it away, but there's no action, either now or in the future, you may need to save it or file it. So some sort of drawer that contains the information. And then the last one, step 6, deter. And using our focus of the productivity workflow formula, reduce, 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 how can you keep the information from coming back to you again? How do you get yourself off a distribution list? How do you automatically file things? How do you create rules? How do you unsubscribe? Use junk mail lists? How do we actually limit the amount of information that comes into our inboxes? It's not just throwing it away. It's preventing it from ever coming back. Now, these 6 Ds, discard, delegate, do, date, drawer, deter, can be applied to any kind of information, any medium, paper, electronic, or otherwise. And you then go through and ask yourself, and the book, of course, outlines this in great detail, what is the equivalent action step with each one of these Ds? So, for example, if we look at email, and we ask ourselves, all right, step 1, discard. I'm in my email. What is the equivalent action step for step 1, discard? And of course, the answer is delete. All right, so hopefully you are using that delete key liberally. I think everyone is pretty good at this one. All right, step 2, D for delegate. It's an email. How would I delegate an email? Well, I would either forward it to someone, or I would turn that email into a task request. Now, you may just say, what? What do you mean turn your email into a task request? Many people are used to inviting others to meetings, but they've never really experimented with the task features in Outlook. If you open an email and click the Move button, move it and then pick Tasks, and then pick Assign Task. You can actually track who you've delegated which emails to and give them a due date and see at any one time who owes you what. And when they finish the task and click it complete, you get a message back in your inbox saying, so-and-so just completed your task request. But many people don't know how to use some of the nice software features that are contained within their different programs. And so spending a little bit of time learning how to do this then is going to become critical. Now I'm going to give you a link in a moment where you can download some screenshots on how to do what I'm talking about here if you've not used Outlook in this way before. But even just forwarding something, if you don't turn the email into a task request, forwarding the email is great, but if you don't set any kind of reminder on that and you don't hear back from the person, these are the kind of things that wake you up in the middle of the night going, oh my gosh, I just forgot about that. So if you go into your sent items and drag that sent items down to task, it creates a copy. And you can click the reminder box and set a reminder to go off so that you can ask yourself, did I hear back from that person? And if so, you dismiss it. If not, you've got an easy follow-up system. So how can you use the tools to help you be organized rather than your poor brain trying to remember everything? All right, step 3, that's discard and delegate. Do then is a reply in email. If it's something that you can just reply to right then, it's something that is high in importance, you can just knock it off your list and get it done, then that's fine. But most people can't do things in a very short period of time, or they have a meeting to go to, or they have other priorities. They can't get to it right then. So you have to date the email. And this is where a lot of people get confused because they don't know how to date emails. If they get an email and they can't delete it or forward it and they need to do it and they can't do it right then, well, they don't want to file it because then they forget about it. So where do I put it? So many people just leave it in their inboxes. And so for some people, the inbox has become this huge kind of giant to-do list. And all of these different dates are all mixed up, and we try all these different flags and sorting systems. So if you open an email and click the Move button and then pick either your tasks, if it's something you need to do, or your calendar, if it has a time, such as call this person at this time. I would not put things that you need to do on your calendar, because if you do and you don't get to them, what do you have to do? Manually change the appointment. Tasks, however, are made to roll forward. And they also create a database where you can search at any one time any task that you've completed. It's set up for performance reviews. Calendar, you would have to go manually go through all of those things. Again, if you don't know how to do these features, you may just need a little bit of training in Microsoft Outlook functionality. 5th step then, the drawer. Put it in a drawer. What's the drawer for email? Well, you can either put it in a personal folder, which is what a lot of people do, or my favorite is to click File, Save As. Just like we save a Word document or a PowerPoint, email is a document. And many people don't even know that you handle email documents the same way you handle anything else, spreadsheets, PDF, File, Save As. I save all my email in my regular folder system where I save everything else, PDFs and .doc. What's the extension for an email? We have a DOCX, a BBTX. Email is .msg, as in Mary, Sam, girl, .msg. It's a message. And again, it's not right, wrong, good, bad. It's just I have a perfectly good folder system where I save everything, either on a hard drive or a shared drive on your network. So I don't want to duplicate that in email folders. So I personally don't use email folders. I save everything in my regular folder system. And then the last step, step 6, is deter. How would you keep an email from coming into one of your email inboxes again? Well, you would either just unsubscribe. So let's say you subscribe to my monthly productivity tips, my monthly newsletter. And it came and you read it and you deleted it. Well, what's going to happen next month? It's going to come again. So deleting something is not a permanent solution. If you didn't want to receive my email ever again, of course, what would you have to do? You have to unsubscribe. Or you can use a rule. So for example, you can right-click on any email you get and go down to Rules and set a new rule and basically tell Outlook instructions. So if I get a report, let's say, that has this in the subject line, file it in this folder. You can do any number of programming steps. You can say, give me an alert. If I get a message from this person, delete it. So using rules reduces the amount of time that you are manually spending in your inbox. So if you have not played with some of that wonderful functionality, you may want to take a look at some of those rules. Now, I put together a little ebook with some screenshots and some step-by-step instructions on some of these Outlook tips that we're talking about. I'm a Microsoft certified application specialist in Outlook. I do a lot of Outlook training. We have hours of Outlook videos on our site. If you go to the laurastack.com/download.htm, sit down with your own Outlook in these screenshots and play around with these 6 Ds. And maybe even send yourself some bogus emails so that you can try it out. Now, this 5th step in our process, closing the loop. Again, once you've kind of triaged your commitment load, you've got your tasks scheduled appropriately, you've focused your attention, you've processed your new information, it's time to kind of consolidate everything into a single, efficient, time-saving system. So closing the loop means tinkering with your workflow until all of the components work smoothly together. So a good way to look at it is, how do I eliminate irritations? How do I weed out the unnecessary? How do I replace everything that doesn't work as well as it should? How do I organize my workspace for maximum efficiency? How do I minimize the time that I spend on all of these processes in the workplace? And so there are so many bottlenecks, which often derive from inefficient processes in your team. You have to depend on other people to keep your workflow steady. So how do you keep it easy for everyone involved? So it's often a good question when you're trying to do this step 5 and break through some of these bottlenecks to clarify some of these workflow issues and asking some good questions. What changes can you make to improve the methods and procedures you're using? And again, these are just samples. You can come up with your own questions. What can you do to work more effectively? What's holding you back? What new systems are benefiting your life? What's frustrating you? What's keeping you from doing what you know you should be doing? What obstacles do you perceive? If your manager, for example, came over and sat down and asked you these questions, I know you will have answers. And that's the funniest thing. When we ask people, what would you have to change about yourself in order for you to become more productive? Everybody knows. Everybody has an answer. When we ask them, what would have to change in this department in order for this organization to become more efficient, more productive? What would we have to do? It's fascinating when we take the time to talk with people and visit this on a regular basis, how much people really do know what will improve, but often we never ask ourselves, we never ask anyone else, or leadership doesn't take the time to ask us. So at your next meeting, I would suggest that you get some time on the agenda, and I have 3 questions that I would recommend that you pose. Okay, so if you're not running the meeting, see if you can get the meeting leader to let you facilitate this conversation. So the first question to ask your team is, what hoops do you jump through on a weekly basis? And when you do these exercises, it's a great idea just to have a whiteboard or a flip chart and start writing down the things that people tell you, because when you give people an opportunity to vent, it's amazing what information you're going to find out. Again, not being judgmental, just gathering information and data. Number 2 question, ask, what time-draining activities do you do more than 3 times a week? The purpose here, of course, is to help us focus on some of those processes that could use some tweaking or are taking longer than they probably need to. I've seen some teams get out pads of sticky notes and put up a workflow process on a wall and eliminate days from a process. I saw another team had a process that they didn't even know that in accounts payable, one group was gathering codes for the purchasing system that the salespeople had already gathered, and there was redundancy in that process. And so these things are discovered with these types of conversations. And last, how can we help you, or how can I help you get things done more quickly? And it's fascinating the answers that you're going to get. So once you've looked at closing this loop, it's always critical to come back to your core and looking at, how is this workflow process working for me personally? How am I managing my capacity? How do I feel? Every one of us has what I call personal energy motif, and just some questions to kind of ask yourself. Some people, it's eating too much, or maybe it's drinking too much, or it's working too much, or it's not exercising enough, or it's not sleeping enough. It's amazing how many different types of areas exist that we can kind of fall down in this area. Everyone has kind of a choice way that they don't practice self-care well enough. And when I ask people, what could you do to take better care of yourself, they always have an answer, but they seem to put themselves last on their to-do list. So remember, you aren't a machine. You have to rest. You have to take breaks. You cannot work nonstop through the day. And you know, the book, of course, focuses on many aspects of this personal energy motif and how to actually get more energy so you're not so tired, so that you can be productive. But I want to just focus on one very quickly, and that's exercise. I have found some little easy ways to exercise efficiently, as research has shown that you can get small doses of exercise in frequently over the course of a week. Rather than having to go to the gym every day for an hour, you can get your exercise in. So if you practice what I call subversive exercise, meaning do things that kind of trick you into exercising during the course of your normal day-to-day activities. So, for example, parking at the far end of a parking lot. When you go to a store, I think that brisk 1-minute walk each way for me really helps. Maybe during your lunch break, just walk around your building a few times. Or if you're listening to a conference call, put on the speakerphone and walk, move around your office instead of staying glued in your chair. Of course, making sure not to bother people around you. What about walking with a cordless phone at home? Or not taking the elevators boycott the elevators. Always take the stairs. At the airport, I don't get on the moving sidewalks. I just walk next to them. Or go on a family walk instead of perhaps watching television after TV. Or when I'm at a practice for one of my kids for baseball or soccer, walk the perimeter of the field while I'm waiting for them anyway. Or while I'm on the phone, you can stand up at the side of your desk and you can do squats or lunges. Nobody knows. These things help. I know it sounds kind of silly, like, could these really add up? But they absolutely do. Doing things like saying, I'll listen to my iPod when I'm working out, or I can watch television, but I need to be on my treadmill, or I'm going to save my favorite audiobook for when I take my walks, or I'm going to tape my favorite show and watch my favorite show while I exercise. They absolutely do add up and serve to be this kind of subversive trick for getting you to move. Well, that is the end of our webinar for today and the end of our productivity workflow formula in the book, What to Do When There's Too Much to Do. Determine what to do, schedule time to do it, focus your attention, process new information, close the loop, and manage your capacity. I want to put up on the screen here, if you have a phone, you can scan the barcodes here for the new Laura Stack app. There are some free videos and ebooks there for you to download. Also have a free monthly newsletter as well. If you're on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, I would love to connect with you with some of the social media. This book also has a special site at laurastack.com/what-to-do. And on there you're going to see a special offer if you do choose to purchase this book on June 26th when it comes out. If you buy it that day and email your receipt, there's a special address there. There are bonuses that are available from many of my author friends that you can download. And there's also 6 videos if you really want to take a deep dive on this program. So I want to thank you all for joining me today, and especially thank Daytimer for their support and continued sponsorship of my work and of this webinar. So I will thank Daytimer and thank Jeff Dubeck and send it back to you. Okay, Jeff, thank you so much. I appreciate your sponsoring me today. Well, not hearing Jeff on the line, I'm going to put up the last slide here by Daytimer and thank Daytimer if
Laura,
you go
do you hear
to...
me?
Oh, there you are. Hi, Jeff.
Hi. Sorry about that.
I was just thanking you and inviting you to sign off with our participants.
Great, thank you. I'd like to thank Laura once again for joining us today. We hope that you've enjoyed today's webinar, and the techniques Laura has shared with you will help you boost your personal productivity. Ready to learn even more and improve your organization? Well, get Laura's new book, as well as her Productivity Pro Planner right now at daytimer.com/productivitypro. You'll also find Daytimer's new bonded leather weekly and monthly planner at daytimer.com. Just search for item 8776. Thank you for participating in today's webinar. Have a wonderful day.